Widowed dad got secretly married, moved his new wife's family into my house, then started acting like he owned the place. So I reminded him who actually does. Sup, Reddit. My widowed dad got secretly married and moved his new wife's entire family into the house my mom left to me. Then they started acting like they owned the place. So I gave them a reality check they'll never forget. This is long and messy, but trust me, it's worth it. I'm Jake, 28 male, and this whole situation is so ridiculous, I still can't believe it actually happened. But before we get to the part where I evicted my dad and his new family from my own house, let me give you some context on how we got here. My mom passed away 3 years ago from ovarian cancer, stage 4 by the time they caught it. She fought for 18 months. And I was there for every chemo session, every hospital stay, every doctor's appointment. My dad? He was there sometimes. Usually had some excuse about work or being too emotional to handle seeing her like that. I remember this one particularly brutal chemo session where mom was throwing up so violently the nurses had to give her extra anti-nausea medication. Dad had promised to come, but texted an hour before saying his boss needed him for an important client meeting. Mom just smiled weakly and said it was okay, but I saw the disappointment in her eyes. That happened a lot during those 18 months. The pattern was always the same. Dad would promise to be there, then find a reason not to show. Work emergency, car trouble, feeling under the weather himself. Meanwhile, I was taking time off my job, sitting in those uncomfortable hospital chairs, holding mom's hand while poison dripped into her veins to kill the cancer that was killing her. I'd bring her books to read, magazines to flip through, those terrible hospital cafeteria sandwiches she somehow developed a taste for. We'd sit together for hours while the chemo did its work, talking about everything and nothing. She'd tell me stories about her students, about the kids who struggled but kept trying, about the ones who wrote her years later to thank her for believing in them. Those were our moments. Just me and mom, facing the worst thing that could happen, together. Mom was a high school English teacher for 26 years. One of those teachers everyone remembers. The kind who'd stay after school helping kids with college essays, who'd buy supplies out of her own pocket, who genuinely cared. She had this gift for making Shakespeare relevant to teenagers who thought they hated reading. She'd connect Hamlet's family drama to their own lives, make them see that people have been dealing with the same problems for centuries. Former students would stop her in grocery stores to thank her. At her funeral, 3 of them showed up. Grown adults who'd driven hours to pay respects to the teacher who'd changed their lives. One of them told me mom had written a recommendation letter that got him into his dream college. Another said mom had stayed late every Thursday for a month to help her with algebra because she was failing and about to lose her scholarship eligibility. That was mom. Always helping, always caring, always putting others first. Except when it came to her money and her house. That she protected fiercely. She wasn't wealthy, but she was smart about money. Saved everything she could, invested carefully, and somehow managed to buy this beautiful 3-bedroom house in a good neighborhood back in 2008 when prices crashed. I remember her coming home that day with the closing papers, excited as a kid on Christmas morning. She'd done it, bought her own house with her own money. No help from anyone. The house was entirely in her name. She'd bought it before marrying Dad, using money from her grandmother's estate. Dad moved in after they got married, but legally, that house was always mom's. She made sure of it too. Had all the paperwork showing sole ownership, kept meticulous records, even had a separate deed filed away in her safe deposit box. During those final weeks when mom knew she wasn't going to make it, she called her attorney to the hospital, updated her will right there in that sterile room that smelled like disinfectant and death. Left the house to me. Not to Dad. To me. Her only child. She was crystal clear about it too. I remember sitting next to her bed while she explained it to the attorney. Her voice was weak but determined. The house goes to Jake. Full ownership. I want it in writing that no one else has any claim to it. Not my husband, not anyone. Just my son. Dad was in the cafeteria when she did this, probably getting his 3rd coffee of the day and complaining to whoever would listen about how hard this was on him. He didn't know about the will change until after the funeral. When mom died, I inherited a fully paid-off house worth about $480,000. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, updated kitchen, finished basement, nice backyard with mature trees, great neighborhood with good schools. The kind of place young families would line up to buy. Dad acted weird about it from the start, kept making comments about how we needed to maintain the property and how our house needed some updates. I'd correct him every time. My house, not ours. He'd get this look on his face like I'd slapped him, but I didn't care. Mom left it to me for a reason. I was living in a small apartment across town at the time, working as a data analyst for a logistics company. Good job, decent pay, but my apartment was basically a glorified shoebox. When I inherited the house, Dad asked if he could stay there temporarily while he figured things out. Just a few months, he said, until I can find my own place. It's too hard being here without your mother, but I need time to get my finances in order before I move. Looking back, I should have said no. Should have trusted my gut that was screaming this was a bad idea. But he was my dad, and he'd just lost his wife of 30 years. I wasn't heartless, so I let him stay. Told him 6 months maximum, rent-free, to get himself sorted out. He agreed, said he appreciated it and would be out by Christmas. That was 3 years ago. For the first year, things were relatively normal. Dad kept to himself mostly, worked his job as an insurance adjuster, came home, watched TV, went to bed. He'd occasionally mention looking at apartments, but never seemed to actually do anything about it. I was still living in my apartment, but would come by weekly to check on things and handle any maintenance issues. I didn't push too hard about him moving out. The guy had just lost his wife. I figured he needed more time to grieve and adjust. Classic mistake. Giving someone an inch and watching them take a mile. Year 2 is when things started getting weird. Dad started acting like he owned the place. Not in big, obvious ways at first, but in these small, incremental changes that added up. He'd mention needing to replace the water heater or repaint the living room, and when I'd say I'd handle it, he'd act offended. I live here. I can take care of it. But it wasn't his house to take care of. He started inviting people over without telling me. I'd show up to check on something and find his buddies from work having a barbecue in the backyard, using my grill, eating food they'd stored in my fridge, acting like it was completely normal. "It's fine, Jake," Dad would say when I'd bring it up. "They're just friends. You don't mind, right?" I did mind, but I let it slide because I'm apparently an idiot who doesn't know how to set boundaries with family. The real problem started about 8 months ago when Dad started dating someone named Patricia. I found out about Patricia when I showed up unannounced one Saturday and found a strange woman cooking breakfast in my kitchen. She was maybe 50, bleached hair with dark roots showing, wearing one of those velour tracksuit things that went out of style in 2005. The kind you see at discount stores with rhinestones spelling out random words like princess or blessed. Hers said fabulous in pink crystals across the back. She jumped when she saw me, spatula in hand, like I was the intruder. "Oh, you must be Jake," she said, way too cheerfully for 7 in the morning. "Your dad's told me so much about you. I'm Patricia." Dad came down the stairs looking sheepish. "Jake, hey, I was going to tell you about Patricia. We've been seeing each other for a few months now." A few months. He'd been dating this woman for months and never mentioned it. In my house. I pulled him aside and asked what was going on. He got defensive immediately. Said he was allowed to have a personal life, that Mom had been gone for 2 years and he was lonely. Made me feel like garbage for even questioning it. Patricia stayed over more and more after that. Then she started leaving stuff at the house, shampoo in the bathroom, clothes in the closet. Eventually, she had her own key. I'd show up and find her curled up on the couch watching reality TV, eating food from my pantry, acting like she belonged there. She'd redecorate little things without asking. New throw pillows appeared. Different curtains in the bathroom. A tacky decorative sign in the kitchen that said, "Live, laugh, love," in cursive script. Every visit, I'd notice something else changed. Something else that erased a bit more of Mom's presence from the house. I tried talking to Dad about it. Explained that while I didn't have a problem with him dating, Patricia basically moving in wasn't what we'd agreed to. He acted like I was being unreasonable. "What do you want me to do, Jake? Live like a monk? Your mother wouldn't want me to be alone forever." Classic guilt trip, weaponizing Mom's memory to justify doing whatever he wanted. But here's what really drove me crazy. Patricia had this whole family that started appearing. First, it was her daughter Brittany, 23, who'd stop by for dinner and end up crashing on the couch. Brittany was one of those people who seemed perpetually between jobs, always had some excuse about why the last place didn't work out. The boss was mean. The co-workers were jealous. The schedule conflicted with her workout routine. Always something. Then Brittany's boyfriend Kevin started showing up. Kevin was this skinny guy with a scraggly beard who wore band t-shirts for groups that broke up in the 90s. He'd raid my fridge, play video games until 3 in the morning with the volume cranked up, and leave empty energy drink cans everywhere. Once I found him sleeping in Mom's office, snoring on the couch she'd picked out for reading student papers. Then Patricia's sister Sharon and her 2 teenagers started appearing on weekends. Sharon was basically an older, louder version of Patricia. She'd bring her kids, a 15-year-old boy who never looked up from his phone, and a 17-year-old girl who'd lock herself in the bathroom for hours, doing makeup tutorials. My 3-bedroom house was turning into a boarding house for Patricia's entire extended family. I'd show up for my weekly check-in and find 6 or 7 people there. Patricia cooking in the kitchen, Brittany and Kevin on the couch, Sharon's kids sprawled across the living room floor. All of them acting like this was completely normal. None of them paid rent. None of them contributed to utilities. They just existed in my space, using my stuff, eating my food if I left anything there, and treating me like an inconvenient visitor when I'd stop by the house I actually owned. The final straw came 4 months ago. I showed up at the house one evening after work. I'd been thinking about moving back in. My apartment lease was ending, and it made no sense paying rent when I owned a perfectly good house. Dad had been there long enough. Time to reclaim my property. I walked in to find furniture I didn't recognize. The couch Mom and I had picked out together was gone, replaced with this ugly brown sectional that looked like it came from a going out of business sale. New coffee table, new lamps, even new curtains. Patricia was in the kitchen, humming to herself, stirring something on the stove. She smiled when she saw me like everything was completely normal. "Jake, perfect timing. I'm making pot roast for dinner. You're staying, right?" "Where's the couch?" I asked, ignoring her dinner invitation. "Oh, that old thing? It was so dated. We donated it and got this beautiful sectional. Much more comfortable for family gatherings. Cost us almost $2,000, but it was worth it. Really opens up the space, don't you think?" That old thing was my mother's couch, the one she'd saved up for, the one we'd spent a Saturday driving around furniture stores to find. She'd been so particular about it. Had to be the right shade of blue, had to be comfortable but not too soft, had to fit perfectly in that spot by the window. We'd finally found it at this small furniture store run by an older couple. Mom had sat on it for 15 minutes, testing it from every angle, before deciding it was the one. I remembered her face when it was delivered. Pure joy. She'd run her hand over the fabric and said, "This is going to be here when you bring your kids to visit someday." That couch was supposed to last forever, hold generations of memories. Patricia had donated it like it was garage sale junk. "You had no right to get rid of that couch," I said, my voice surprisingly calm, considering the rage building in my chest. Patricia's smile wavered. "Well, it was pretty worn out. The fabric was pilling and there was a stain on one of the cushions. This new one is so much better for entertaining. It wasn't yours to get rid of." Dad came in from the garage, saw my face, and immediately went into damage control mode. "Jake, buddy, we should have asked first. But the couch was getting worn out, and Patricia found a great deal on this sectional. Paid for it herself. Isn't it nice? Way more seating? I don't care who paid for it. This isn't her house." "Well, actually," Patricia started, then stopped when Dad shot her a look. I felt my stomach drop. "Actually what?" Dad cleared his throat. "Patricia and I got married last month. Quietly, just us and a justice of the peace. Didn't want a big fuss. We were going to tell you soon. So technically, this is her house too now." The room tilted. Everything went fuzzy around the edges. I actually had to grab the counter to steady myself. "You what?" "We got married. Made it official. After your mother passed, I thought I'd never find love again. But Patricia showed me that life goes on. We're happy together, and we decided to make it permanent." Married. My dad had gotten married without telling me, and apparently thought that gave his new wife ownership of my house. "Dad, this house is in my name. Mom left it to me. You getting married doesn't change that." He waved that off like it was a minor technicality. "You put me on the deed when I moved in, remember? As a co-owner?" "No, I absolutely did not do that. I would never have done that." Mom's voice rang in my head from that hospital room. "Just my son. Not my husband. Not anyone. Just my son. Dad, I never put you on the deed. The house is solely in my name." His face went red, that vein in his forehead starting to pulse the way it did when he was angry. "Yes, you did. We signed papers. I remember signing papers when I moved in." "What papers?" He fumbled around in the kitchen junk drawer, the same junk drawer Mom had organized so carefully, now overflowing with takeout menus and loose batteries and mysterious keys that probably didn't open anything. He pulled out some documents that looked official, triumphantly waving them at me. I took them, feeling my blood pressure rising with each line I read. They weren't deed transfer papers. They were the forms I'd signed, giving him permission to make emergency repairs if needed while he was living there. Basic stuff so he could call a plumber if a pipe burst or get the furnace serviced without having to track me down first. Just a simple power of attorney for household maintenance. Nothing about ownership. Nothing about property transfer. Just authorization to handle repairs. But he was waving them around like they were the deed to the house, like they proved he owned half of everything. "These don't give you ownership, Dad. These just let you handle repairs. There's nothing here about property ownership or deed transfer. It's right here in the first paragraph. Limited power of attorney for maintenance purposes only. Well, I've been living here for 3 years, paying utilities, maintaining the property, making improvements. That's got to count for something. I basically own this place through sweat equity. Patricia jumped in then, clearly having researched this topic. We consulted with someone about property law. Apparently, if someone lives somewhere long enough and contributes to upkeep, they can claim tenant rights or even ownership through adverse possession. We've been living here, maintaining everything, treating it as our primary residence. The law recognizes that. I stared at her. This woman I'd known for 8 months was standing in my kitchen, lecturing me about property law regarding my house. A house she had no legal claim to. A house my mother had specifically left to me with ironclad documentation to prevent exactly this kind of situation. That's not how adverse possession works, I said slowly. And even if it was, Dad's been here with my permission. He's not an adverse possessor. He's a guest who's overstayed his welcome. Dad's face got harder. I'm not a guest in my own home. It's not your home. It's mine. That's when things got ugly. Dad started yelling about how ungrateful I was, how he'd raised me, how I wouldn't even have this house if not for him being married to my mother. Patricia chimed in with comments about respecting elders and family values. I stood there taking it, watching my dad transform into someone I barely recognized. Finally, I'd had enough. You have 30 days to move out, I said quietly. All of you. Dad laughed. Actually laughed. You can't evict us. This is my house too. It's not, and I can. You'll be hearing from my attorney. I walked out before I said something I'd regret. Behind me, I could hear Patricia comforting Dad, telling him not to worry, that they'd figure this out. The next day, I called the attorney who'd handled Mom's estate. His name was Raymond, and he'd known my mom for years. When I explained what was happening, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. Jake, I'm going to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Did you ever sign any documents regarding that property after your mother passed? Just the forms letting Dad handle emergency repairs. That's it. Nothing about refinancing? Joint ownership? Nothing like that? Nothing. Why? Another pause. Because someone filed a quitclaim deed 6 months ago transferring partial ownership of the property to your father. My blood went cold. I never signed anything like that. The signature on file is supposedly yours. I'm looking at it now in the county records. It transfers 50% ownership to your father. Fraud. My dad had committed fraud. Raymond walked me through what must have happened. Dad had probably created fake documents and filed them with the county recorder's office. It's surprisingly easy to do if you have someone's signature to copy and basic knowledge of property law. Most recorders' offices don't verify signatures. They assume people are filing legitimate documents. Here's what we're going to do, Raymond said. First, we file a complaint with the county recorder to dispute the quitclaim deed. Second, we file a police report for forgery and fraud. Third, we start formal eviction proceedings. Your father is going to face some serious legal trouble. That evening, I went back to the house with Raymond. Dad, Patricia, and what looked like half of Patricia's family were gathered in the living room. Brittany was there with Kevin. Patricia's sister Sharon with her 2 teenagers. Even Patricia's elderly mother was parked in my recliner. 8 people. 8 people were now living in my 3-bedroom house. Raymond introduced himself and handed Dad a folder of documents. Dad's face went from confusion to anger to fear as he read through them. This is a notice that the quitclaim deed filed 6 months ago has been disputed and is under investigation for fraud, Raymond explained calmly. It's also a formal 30-day eviction notice for you and all occupants of this property. Finally, there's information about the police report filed for forgery and fraud related to the fake deed. Patricia jumped up. This is harassment. You can't just throw us out. We have rights. Actually, he can, Raymond replied. This property is solely owned by Jake. You're all here without a valid lease or rental agreement. That makes you trespassers. I'm his father, Dad shouted. That doesn't give you ownership of his property or the right to forge documents. The room erupted. Everyone talking over each other. Patricia's family acting like I was the villain. Dad yelling about betrayal and disrespect. I just stood there watching the chaos, feeling nothing but cold anger. Finally, I spoke loud enough to cut through the noise. 30 days. Everyone out. No exceptions. Brittany started crying. Kevin called me names. Patricia's mother muttered something about disrespectful young people. Dad just stared at me with this look of absolute hatred. Over the next month, I documented everything. Every instance of them not paying rent, every modification they'd made to the house without permission. Every piece of Mom's furniture they'd removed or destroyed. Raymond compiled it all into a case file. The police investigation into the forged quitclaim deed moved surprisingly fast. Turns out Dad had left a pretty obvious trail. He'd used a signature from an old birthday card I'd given him, made copies, and practiced tracing it until he could reproduce it well enough. Then he'd filled out the quitclaim deed forms and filed them himself at the county recorder's office. The recorder's office records showed him filing the documents on a Tuesday afternoon. Their security cameras caught him doing it. He hadn't even tried to hide his identity. When confronted by police, Dad initially denied everything. Then, when they showed him the evidence, he broke down and admitted it. Said he'd panicked after marrying Patricia, worried about having nowhere to go if I decided to kick him out. Thought if he was part owner, I couldn't force him to leave. Patricia, of course, claimed complete innocence. Said she had no idea Dad had forged anything. But her earlier comments about adverse possession and tenant rights suggested otherwise. She'd been coaching him, probably researching ways to stake a claim to my property. The 30 days passed. They didn't leave. I'd been monitoring the situation from a distance. Drove by a few times and saw Dad's car still in the driveway, lights on in the evening, clearly still occupied. Called the house phone once and Patricia answered cheerfully, like nothing was wrong. They were betting I wouldn't follow through. That eventually I'd cave because he was my dad, and family doesn't really kick family out on the street. They were wrong. On day 31, I showed up with Raymond, a locksmith named Danny who'd done work for me before, and 2 sheriff's deputies. Time to make it official. The deputies were these 2 older guys who'd clearly done this kind of thing 100 times before. Officer Brennan and Officer Walsh. Brennan did most of the talking while Walsh took notes and observed. They had this professional detachment that made the whole thing feel both more real and more surreal. Dad opened the door looking like he hadn't slept in days. His hair was uncombed, he was wearing the same shirt I'd seen him in 2 days ago when I'd driven past, and he had this desperate, cornered look in his eyes. Behind him, I could see packed boxes in the hallway, but also plenty of unpacked stuff. They'd made a half-hearted attempt to move, but clearly hadn't taken the deadline seriously. "This is your final notice," Raymond said in that calm attorney voice that somehow made everything sound both official and slightly ominous. "You have 4 hours to remove yourselves and your possessions from this property. After that, anything remaining becomes abandoned property and will be disposed of according to state law. Do you understand?" Dad tried pleading immediately. His whole body language changed. Shoulders hunched, voice getting higher and shaky. "Jake, please, we just need a little more time. We've been looking for places, but everything is so expensive. Just another week or 2. Come on, I'm your father. You can't really do this. Think about what your mother would say." That last line made my jaw clench. Mom would say you should have thought about this before you forged documents and tried to steal the house she left me. Patricia appeared behind him, and she looked furious instead of scared. Her face was red, eyes blazing. "You're really going to put your own father on the street? What kind of son are you? We have nowhere to go. This is elder abuse." "Actually, ma'am," Officer Brennan said, consulting his clipboard, "your husband is 62, which doesn't meet the legal definition of elderly for abuse purposes. And this is a legal eviction proceeding that's been properly filed and documented. If you'd like to discuss your concerns, I can provide you with information about tenant advocacy resources. We're not tenants. This is a family home." Patricia's voice was getting shriller. "Do you have a lease agreement?" Brennan asked. "No, but do you pay rent?" "Well, we pay utilities and that's not rent. So legally, you're residing here without a rental agreement, which makes this a straightforward eviction case. The owner has given you ample notice. It's time to vacate." The sheriff's deputies made it clear. They could leave voluntarily or be removed. Their choice. For a moment, I thought Dad might actually try to physically resist. He had this look on his face like he was calculating whether he could somehow barricade the door or create enough of a scene that the deputies would leave and give him more time. But Walsh stepped forward slightly, hand resting casually on his belt near his equipment, and Dad just deflated completely. His shoulders sagged, all the fight went out of him, and he nodded. "Fine, we'll go. But this isn't over, Jake. Family doesn't forget things like this." "You're right," I said. "I won't forget that you tried to steal my house." It took 3.5 hours for them to get everything out. Patricia's family showed up with trucks to help move stuff. Sharon arrived with her beat-up pickup. Brittany and Kevin borrowed someone's cargo van. Even Patricia's elderly mother showed up in a rusty sedan to provide moral support and shoot me disapproving looks. The whole family had turned out to witness my supposed cruelty. They formed this little solidarity circle, helping each other load boxes and furniture, shooting me dirty looks every time they passed. Lots of muttered comments just loud enough for me to hear. Patricia's mother kept saying things like, "In my day, children respected their parents, and this generation has no family values." Sharon made sure to catch my eye every time she walked past, shaking her head dramatically. "This is what's wrong with young people today," she announced to no one in particular. "No respect, no loyalty, just me, me, me." The funny part was watching them try to take things that weren't theirs. The new sectional couch? Patricia started directing Kevin and Brittany to load it into the van. I pointed out it was now my property since it was purchased for and placed in my house. Patricia argued she'd paid for it with her own money. I showed her that without a receipt proving ownership, and given that it was a fixed property in my house, it legally belonged to me now. Same logic she'd used about their house. Sharon tried loading Mom's good dishes into a box. I stopped her immediately. Those were Mom's wedding china, and they weren't going anywhere. "But Patricia uses these," Sharon protested. "Patricia doesn't live here anymore." Kevin tried taking my lawnmower. "Your dad said I could have it." My dad doesn't own anything here to give away. By hour 3, most of their stuff was loaded into a moving truck and 2 pickup trucks. The house looked ransacked, holes in the walls where they'd hung heavy pictures, carpet stains, damaged baseboards. They'd treated my property like a rental they were never planning to get a deposit back from. As they were loading the last boxes, Dad approached me one final time. His eyes were red. Whether from crying or just exhaustion, I couldn't tell. His face was haggard, with deep lines I didn't remember being there before. He looked 10 years older than he had a month ago. For a brief second, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. "Jake, please, can we talk about this? Just you and me, father and son. Forget the lawyers, forget Patricia, forget everything. Just talk to me." "What's there to talk about, Dad?" "I'm your father. Doesn't that mean anything to you anymore?" His voice cracked. "I raised you. I was there for your baseball games, your school plays, your graduation. I taught you how to ride a bike, how to drive a car, all those years together. And you're just going to throw them away? You threw them away when you forged my signature. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I swear, Jake. I panicked. Patricia and I needed stability. I'm getting older, and the thought of starting over alone terrified me. I thought if I was part owner, we could all live here together. Like a family. I thought you'd understand eventually." "Understand? You tried to steal my house, Dad. The house Mom specifically left to me because she knew—" I stopped myself, but Dad caught it. "She knew what?" His eyes narrowed. I could have lied, could have softened it, but I was done protecting his feelings. "She knew you'd try something like this. That's why she changed her will in the hospital. That's why she made sure every document was ironclad. That's why she left it to me and only me. She didn't trust you." The words hit him like physical blows. His face went white, then red, then white again. He opened his mouth twice, but no sound came out. "That's not... She wouldn't... We were married for 30 years. And she loved you. But she also knew who you were. She knew you were weak when it came to money and status and making yourself feel important. That's why she protected me from you." Patricia called from one of the trucks. "Come on, we need to go. The storage unit closes in an hour." Dad looked back at her, then at me. For just a second, I saw something in his eyes. Maybe regret, maybe just self-pity, maybe a genuine moment of understanding what he'd lost. Hard to tell. "I hope you're happy," he said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. "Living in this big house all alone, you're just like your mother, stubborn and cold. She always thought she was better than me, smarter than me. Looks like she raised you to think the same thing." That was it. That's what made me snap. The part of me that had been holding back, trying to maintain some shred of civility, just broke. "You're right. I am like Mom. She was smart enough to see through you. Smart enough to make sure you couldn't take from me what she worked her whole life to build. She saw you coming from a mile away, Dad. Even at the end, fighting cancer, barely able to speak, she knew she couldn't trust you with her legacy. That's why she changed her will in the hospital when you were in the cafeteria getting your third coffee. That's why she made sure every document was ironclad. That's why she had her attorney there with witnesses. She was protecting me from you." I let that sink in, watching his face process what I was saying. She knew. She knew you'd try to take this house. She knew you'd marry someone new and forget all about what we built together. She knew you'd choose your own comfort over honoring her wishes. That's why she left everything to me and nothing to you. Not $1, not one piece of furniture, not 1 square foot of property. She specifically wrote in the will that you had no claim to any of her assets. And you know what the last thing she said to me was? Dad's lips trembled, but he didn't speak. She said, "Take care of the house. Don't let anyone take it from you. especially not your father." Those were her actual last words to me. Not, "I love you" or "be happy." She used her dying breath to warn me about you. That last part wasn't entirely true. Mom's last words had actually been, "I love you, always." But Dad didn't need to know that. He needed to understand the magnitude of what he'd done, what Mom had seen in him, what he'd proven her right about. Dad opened his mouth, but nothing came out. His whole body seemed to fold in on itself. Behind him, Patricia honked the horn impatiently, oblivious to or uncaring about what was happening. "Get out of my house," I said, my voice steady and cold. "And don't come back. Ever." He left. They all did. The sheriff's deputies stayed until the last truck pulled away, then watched as the locksmith changed every lock. New deadbolts, new door handles, even a new garage door opener. No one from that circus was getting back in. After everyone left, I walked through the empty house. Well, not completely empty. There was damage everywhere. Holes in walls, scratched floors, broken cabinet hinges. They'd done thousands in damage. But it was mine again. I stood in the living room where Mom used to sit reading papers every evening, where she'd helped me with homework at the coffee table, where we decorated Christmas trees and watched movies, and just existed together as a family back when family meant something. The house felt emptier than ever, but it also felt clean, like I'd scrubbed away 3 years of bad decisions and toxic people. That night, I slept in my old bedroom for the first time in 3 years. The room where I'd grown up, where Mom used to read me bedtime stories when I was little, where I'd stayed up studying for SATs and stressing about college applications. It felt right being back. The legal fallout took months to fully resolve. Dad got charged with forgery and fraud. Since the amount involved was over a certain threshold, it was a felony. He ended up taking a plea deal: 2 years probation, community service, and restitution for legal fees. Patricia divorced him 6 months later, apparently being married to a felon who'd lost his house, and most of his savings on legal fees wasn't the stability she'd been looking for. She moved to Arizona with Brittany. Last I heard, she was dating someone else. Dad ended up in a small apartment on the other side of town, lost his insurance job after the conviction. Now he works retail at some big box store, barely making ends meet. He tried reaching out a few times through relatives, asking if we could talk. I never responded. Some family members thought I was too harsh. My aunt called saying I should forgive him. That family is important, that everyone makes mistakes. I asked her if she'd forgive someone who tried to steal her house through fraud. She changed the subject. Others got it. My cousin, who'd always been close with Mom, told me Mom would be proud, that she'd specifically structured her will to protect me from exactly this situation, that she'd seen Dad's true nature even if I hadn't. I spent the next few months fixing up the house, patching walls, replacing damaged flooring, repainting everything. It became a project, erasing every trace of Dad and Patricia's occupation, restoring it to what it had been when Mom was alive. Dad drives by sometimes. I've seen his car slow down in front of the house. He never stops, never gets out. Just drives by slowly, then speeds away. Part of me wonders what he's thinking, if he regrets what he did, if he misses Mom, or just misses having a free place to live. Probably the latter. The house is mine now. Completely. Legally. Undeniably mine. I've got the deed framed in the hallway. Every time I see it, I remember Mom's final gift to me wasn't just property. It was security, stability, and proof that at least one person in my life loved me enough to protect me, even after she was gone. Dad tried to take that away, tried to steal it, forge documents, fill Mom's house with strangers, all so he could play the big man with his new wife and her family. He failed. I won. Mom won. Her legacy stays intact. And Dad? He gets to live with the consequences of choosing Patricia and her schemes over his own son, gets to work retail at 62 years old, gets to watch from his car as the house he tried to steal stays firmly in my possession. Guys, we are so close to hit 100,000 subscribers on this channel. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. It really helps hit that 100,000 mark. Thanks for making this dream come true.